right. Welcome to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. And we've got a really cool guest for you guys today, although I'm a little embarrassed to say that he has not been a guest on the show yet. That seems really weird considering how long we've known each other, the circles that we run in, the stages we've spoken on, those kinds of things. So forgive my embarrassment, and I promise that this will be a lot of fun and that we will get a bunch of information from our guest, and that it'll be so much we'll have to have him back for a sequel and a sequel and a sequel. So welcome to the show, Phil Treadwell. What's up, man?
How you doing, Adam? Man, I appreciate you having me on. It's great to be here. I'm having to this goes to show to my day today is one where it's very it's a metaphor for the mortgage industry. We always have to pivot. We always have to figure things out because someone hit a telephone pole and knocked out the electricity to my office building. So I had to literally race home. So I'm sitting on my couch with my laptop making this happen. But man, we're going to go with it. We're still going to have a great conversation. But instead of being in my podcast studio, you got me on my living room couch.
We improvise.
We improvise.
It's funny because, and this is absolutely side quest shit here, but years ago, gosh, I can't even remember how many. It could have been 20, maybe more. I was working with my daughter's elementary school on their I don't think they called it Olympics of the Mind anymore, although they did when we were kids. And I was kind of running this program for the school. And one of the teams, I think a sixth grade team, great kids, they were doing the project where you build a balsa wood bridge and you stack weights on it. And if your bridge held the most weight, you were the winner. And they'd advanced all the way to the state tournament at the University of Denver. And when they got there, they realized they had built their bridge wrong, different than they had built it the previous times that had advanced them to that point. And they were cool with it. Like, let's see how it goes. We live and learn. We'll do it again next time. And all of a sudden I had this revelation that life is really about how you react, not how you act. How do you roll with the punches? How do you deal with the changes? Those kinds of things. And that shit is hard.
It is.
But here we are, adapting, improvising, and moving forward.
That's exactly right. You know, my company, M1 Academy, M1 stands for Mindset First. See, our mindset controls our attitude and our actions. And those are the only two things that we can actually control, right? We can control what we do and how we respond to the things that happen to us. We can't control our partners. We can't control our clients. We sure can't control the market. But we do have control of those things that happen to us and how we react and the actions that we take. So this is one of those days where, hey, it's a Monday, it's a beautiful summer day, and we're going to make things happen, whether people are going to hit telephone poles and knock out power or not.
Okay, I love it. All right, well, let's get a little bit of background because obviously I do want you to be able to give us some insight onto M1 because I do think it's a fantastic program. But prior to M1, what was Phil doing?
So I've been 21 years, I think now, maybe 22 in the mortgage industry, you know, all on the sales side. I started as an originator, was a branch manager, ended up doing kind of a net branch that segued into me owning my own broker shop from 2006 to 2008. In hindsight, it wasn't the best time to start a financial services company because financial Armageddon is unfolding. But we actually did fairly okay and got purchased by what was the largest mortgage lender in the country at that time. Stayed with them for about 2 years, was a top producer in a 6 or 7 state region. Didn't like the bigger mortgage company, bigger bank world. And so I've kind of found a home in more mid-size to smaller companies that were very growth oriented, that philosophically landed the same. So worked my way up through area manager, regional VP, national director roles. But I think really a turning point in my career is kind of a struggling, you know, area manager, regional VP. I started a podcast in 2018, which was preceded by that with, doing some, content marketing and some social media marketing and things, and then led into a podcast. And it's called Mortgage Marketing Expert. I've done that. We just had our 7-year anniversary on June 1st and had a lot of the who's who in mortgage and real estate. And that was really what took my career in a different direction. Instead of just being a practitioner, just kind of working on the thing, really expanding my network and really talking to elite professionals, top performers, who's who in and out of the mortgage and real estate industry. And as a national director for a company it was really 2021 through 2023. At the beginning of 2022, I saw people really starting to struggle, right? Rates were going 0.5%, going up 0.5% a month at the time. And, I decided to start a production team again. Even as a national director, I hadn't produced in about 8 or 9 years. I'd never produced in the state that I was living in at that time. And we had a lot of success. I didn't want to be a talking head in the industry that, hadn't done it in a long time. So I jumped back into it really as proof of concept that these were still very relevant tactics and habits and mindset. And we went to a several $1 million a month run rate, ended out into the year close to top 1% in the country. And I only originated for that year. And that really kind of segued into coaching. I didn't set out to be a coach. I didn't set out to do what I do now, as far as, speaking and podcasting and coaching, because I love the mortgage and real estate industry and loved being a practitioner and helping people and building businesses. But people were like, open your playbook. What did you do in 2022? How did you do that? And so that started a series of workshops. And I really it was a kind of a high ticket price. We did 4 2-hour sessions over 2 hours a week. And people were getting results, but not at the level that I felt like they should have been, having, this entire tactical playbook at their fingertips. And my coach and mentor at the time was like, you're underestimating some of this mindset piece. And so that's really where M1 Academy originated. But it's through, 2 decades of having done it, helping people, do it as I was building companies. And it just kind of organically happened. And, I love what I do. I think right now, what you do, what I do is crucially important to our industry. And this isn't a knock on companies in general. It's just the industry as a whole. There's not a lot of this type of thing within companies, where so many other industries and verticals, a lot of the sales leadership and managers spend a lot of time doing what we do. But so often in our industry, most of the managers and sales leadership also have to produce. And those are 2 different things. I think a producing branch manager or some type of producing sales leader is one of the most difficult jobs. Not the most difficult job, because you're serving 2 masters at that standpoint. And so, prior to even getting in the mortgage industry, I did a lot of sales and management and things. But I fell into this industry and realized this was an opportunity to run a business within a business. And I've opened up side businesses, kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit, everything, obviously the podcast and media company to a craft beer brewery and a lot of things in between. And I think that so many people are challenged right now, are struggling right now, but it's also the time where there's the most opportunity. And I think that's really what people need to take away from what's happening is now is the time where the rubber meets the road. We're not order takers. Deals aren't falling from the sky. So now it's time to dial in your systems and processes, find the right strategy that is sustainable for you, and go out and make things happen on a big level.
Okay, I'm going to further embarrass myself, and I did in our intro before I brought you on. I cannot believe how similar our paths have been.
Yeah.
Timeline. I started a few years before you did. I opened my brokerage in 2005. Again, a couple years of growing pains, right into the Great Recession. So a couple more years of pain. And we just celebrated 20 years last month or the month before. And had written loans for a few years prior to that, before starting my own brokerage. I think this is our 8th year of the podcast of How I Met Your Mortgage. So very similar. I mean, the coincidences are mind-boggling to me. So I'm really embarrassed that you and I don't spend more time, especially when there's a big difference between where you're working with people and where I'm working with people, because our groove is really tactical and tractional. You need to be doing these things. You need to be doing contact management. Here's how to set up all your social media profiles. Here's how to be intentional about your social media. Here's what you need to be doing in video production, milestone, live, short form. Here's what you need to be doing in writing. Here's what you need to be doing in branding, in building credibility, on and on. And we never touch mindset.
Yeah.
And that's a big focus for you.
It is.
But prior to us doing this morning, I did sign up for your monthly mastermind group because now I am uber curious. And obviously, we've seen each other speak at different venues and locations, and why we always seem to end up in Vegas in August is beyond me. That just seems dumb. For those of you that like 120-degree heat, by all means, shine on, you crazy diamonds. Go to Vegas in August. But there's really little in the way of overlap that way. Mm-hmm. So I do think there are a lot of things that our audience, our clients aren't getting from us that they would be getting from you. So give us a little insight into M1, all the different things that you're doing, and what people could be taking away from this when it comes to mindset. And again, I think this is huge. I cannot emphasize enough how important I think the realm of how we react versus how we act is of importance. And I'm guessing that that's going to fall right in line with what you really want people to be learning about when it comes to mindset.
Absolutely. So all of us, everyone in the industry, whenever we hit a plateau, whenever we're struggling, whenever we're not getting enough,
when that groove turns into a rut.
Right.
Yeah.
Those types of things, we almost always seek out more how-to. We want to learn the new tactic. What's the new shiny object? What's the new 7 steps to success that I can follow? And that is great, because for some people, and potentially the majority of people, they need to go do more work. They need to take more action. But there is a segment of people that need to understand the mindset of it. And the easiest example that I can use is we've all been in situations where we're being pitched a product, a service, something we're going to buy. And we get the pitch and everybody's like, hey, sounds good. Numbers make sense, but let me think about it. And then there's other situations where you're like, I don't have a clue what you just said, but I'm in, let's go. That's a mindset thing. Ed Milet said from stage a few years ago, I got the opportunity to meet him and spend a little time and saw him speak on stage. And one of the things that he said that's been very profound is, in sales, we need to stop getting people to just believe what we're saying and make sure we believe what we're saying. And that's a mindset thing. And so what we spend a lot of time with, I would say 3/4 of what we talk about and coach on is very tactical, is very system oriented, is very, process driven. But there's only on the foundation of understanding why you do what you do. How does that turn into your unique value offer? How does that tie into your messaging, your marketing, your branding, or that attention grabbing efforts? But we also have to look further down the road and say, what's our North Star? What's our ideal version of ourselves, right? We've all heard the quote, the definition of hell is meeting the person that you might have become. I say, heck with that. Let's define who that person is, that next level ideal version of us, reverse engineer that into some milestones, start some goals. But then the most important part is, once we have our goals established, we have to start creating daily habits, those activities, those non-negotiables. And so those types of things are where people, I see a lot of folks get the lift. Is all of us have 2 things that have to be firing on all cylinders: capability and willingness. Because there's a lot of people that are massively capable, but they're not willing. They're not going out and doing the thing.
They don't do the work.
Right. And so then you have some people that are willing, but they're not capable. And that's where the how-to comes in. I just believe that the far majority of people in this business know what to do. They're just not doing it for some reason.
Absolutely.
And if we can unlock that reason, all of a sudden people have a desire. Statistically, 93% of people do not achieve the goals that they set for themselves on an annual basis. And the 2 main reasons, the first one is they don't have enough clarity. They're like, I want my business to grow. Okay, well, what does that mean? Is that people? Is that units? Is that volume? Is that income? Like, what's the metric? Define that. And then the other reason that people don't achieve their goals is they just don't want it bad enough. They've set an arbitrary goal that they think they're supposed to set. right? The metaphor that I heard is you've got to want it as much as a drowning person wants their next breath, right? Which sounds morbid, but it's a singularness of focus. When someone's fighting for air, they're not wondering, did I leave the stove on? Hey, that bill's coming due. You've got to be all in and focused. And sometimes we create this moral high ground. I want to help 100 families this year or 200 families this year. But what's really going to get them to take action on a daily basis is they want a nice watch. They want a nicer car. They want to retire a spouse. So I really dig down. I was like, listen, in our business, if you want something material, I don't be materialistic, and I don't want to be selfish or whatever. Sometimes it's okay to have that kind of goal, because in our business, to buy that thing, to get that thing, it has to come out of an abundance. We're not going to put ourselves in a bad financial situation to buy a new car, hopefully, or to buy a new watch or a handbag. So what in our business, to get that abundance, you have to go help more people, right? You've got to help people achieve the dream of homeownership. You have to help people create passive income, investing in real estate. And so all of a sudden what happens is we can go chase a more shallow, in quotes, goal, if that's what's going to create the drive to go take action on a daily basis. Because in our industry, we're not taking advantage of people, we're going in and helping people. And so this mindset thing goes deeper than just the tactical stuff, because if you give me two people, one person that has absolutely perfect tactics, they have the right scripts, they have the right things that they're doing every day, they're going to get some results. But if you get someone over here that has a strong growth mindset, they understand where they're going, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they have imperfect tactics, they're still going to get more results than this person over here that has perfect tactics from an execution standpoint, because there's this visceral feeling like we talked about a second ago. People want to believe we believe what we're talking about. There's a massive abundance of information out there on the internet, on YouTube, on social media, about buying a home, refinancing a home, real estate, all these things. Today's generations, today's home buyers, they need someone that's going to step in and say, okay, first of all, what all of this is relevant to me, and how can I use this to achieve my goals? But we spend so much time talking about features of a loan program, features of a home, features of this type of thing, that we don't articulate the benefit of why it even matters to them. And I think that that's a mindset thing that we've got to get wrapped around. So these strategies that we're creating, it can't be a one size fits all. Same way with you. You're not coaching every single client the same way. You have all these tactical things and playbooks, but you're helping them pick and choose the things that are relevant to them. I'm doing the same thing, because what we know is we want it to be sustainable. There's coaching companies out there that don't let you choose. They say, you need to do these 5 things and these 5 things every single day, every single week, never fail. And we're going to hold you accountable to that, almost militaristically. But the thing about that is,
right. Call 50 real estate agents every Monday.
That's exactly right. And the challenge is, if making phone calls isn't organic to them, they're either not going to get results or it's not going to be sustainable. Well, what happens if we tweak that a little bit and say, hey, why don't you send a text message, a DM, to 5 or 10 realtors every single day and create a consistent and persistent habit? And maybe it's, hey, Adam, I know you're a realtor, saw you on social media, love what you're doing. I work my sphere of influence, a database. Sometimes I run into people that don't have a realtor. I'd love to have a cup of coffee, see if our goals align. Who knows, I might be able to send you some business as well, right? Oh, no, I'm already working with a lender. Understandable, not trying to infringe on that relationship. I'd love to talk about how we can do some business above and beyond that. Let's grab a cup of coffee, be the best 10 minutes of your week, right? Maybe that is a better scenario, where someone's comfortable sending texts or DMs and then setting up a phone call instead of blindly calling someone. I have friends in this industry, in mortgage, real estate, coaching, whatever, that you call their cell phone and you literally get the voicemail and it says, hey, this is Phil. If you're trying to leave a message, we probably don't know each other very well. You're going to get a much quicker response via text, right? And how many of us don't answer phone calls when we don't know who it is? Well, realtors are the same way. Our assumption is that just because they're in sales, they're answering people that they don't know who it is, and that may not be effective. So the point in here lies not what one tactical thing is better than the other or even more effective than the other. It's what's organic to that person, understanding their unique value offer, what strategy they provide, what problems do they solve, and where is it they're wanting to go. And then let's stack the tactics in there. They're going to help them not only achieve that result, but be in an efficient and sustainable way.
and plan for the long run. These are things
Absolutely.
that have to be malleable. You
Right.
and I both know that there are things that are going to be constants, like good contact management, your database, and whether that's the phone, the text and DMs, emails, snail mail. I don't really give a shit. Obviously, the goal in that is more people consuming more of your content. In fact, God, I think you and I spoke in an event where there was an IT or a social media guru that had actually used that phrase or something similar. More people consuming more of your content. If that happens to be whatever comes out of your mouth during a conversation, so be it, or at a networking event, or if it's a TikTok video, it doesn't matter. That's certainly something that can be done with habitual activity. It's something that can be malleable, so it can shift with markets. It can shift with your personality, those kinds of things. But yeah, to have both intertwined, who this person is, what are their goals, what is that mindset, right? Mindset first here, ladies and gentlemen, this is what Phil is telling you. And then to build in these activities, these rituals, and hopefully eventually just autonomous habits. I'm guessing Atomic Habits is in your 50 top books
It is.
list. Okay.
It is.
And as it should be for all of you, no question, because those are the kinds of things that build into the success, the growth, the goals that Phil is describing here. So, yeah, that's really big. That's an enormous, and I guess I never really thought of it that way with our coaching clients or with our audiences, that we do get a feel for them and then obviously put the content in the proper light, in the proper order, in the proper focus to help them, well, do things that are going to be authentically them.
Yes.
And I think that's a big piece of it that a lot of these people miss. And it goes absolutely to the heart of what you're saying about salespeople in general. This is not just true of those of you in mortgages and real estate, but everything, cars, financial planners, insurance agents. If you don't believe in what you're selling, there's a real problem. Let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt and assume that they do. Well, then you've got to portray that in an authentic way. It's got to be authentically Adam, authentically Phil, authentically Bob, the Ferrari salesman. I can't remember the name of the character from Scent of a Woman. The Ferrari salesman.
Yeah.
Right? Like butter on toast. I'm known from coast to coast, whatever his lines were, but absolutely great ideas. And that character believed in selling Ferraris. He absolutely believed in his product, and all of us have to. And just as another little side note, just so Phil thinks I'm actually paying attention and listening and watching from a distance, I have a sign taped to the bottom of my computer monitor in the office that says, "We're here to help people."
Yes.
We're here to help people.
Yep. It's interesting because I read a Forbes article years ago and it just popped in my head, and it said it was like 10 things that the best leaders say or do or something like that. And one of the first ones is a good leader always asks, how can I help? What can I do? And I think that all of us are leaders, whether we choose to be or want to be or not, because as an advisor, you're leading someone to the right decision. You're leading them towards a strategy that's going to be beneficial to them. But in us taking action to go do those things, if anybody is familiar with the coach, is it Gino Ariema? He's women's UConn basketball coach. He's one of the winningest coaches in college sports history. He's won, all but one of the national championship games he's been to. It's like 12 or 15 or something like that. And what he talks about a lot is that this capable and willing. He said, when someone's not doing something, like if one of our players isn't doing what they need to be doing, it's because they legitimately don't know how, or they just don't want to. And he said, we hope it's the former and not the latter, because if they genuinely don't know how, we can coach and teach that. But if they just don't want to, that's not of the caliber and eliteness of player that we need. And so I think whenever you look at top performers, at elite professionals, the willingness is always there. The how-to is going to change and evolve. And like you talked about, you got to pivot sometimes. It's got to be malleable, I think is the word you used. Yes, that is true. But if we're constantly focusing on the how to and not the willingness and the desire and the drive to go do the things, it doesn't matter how perfect our tactics are. It doesn't matter this cool strategy we have for creating attention and creating and converting leads and all this other stuff, because we're not going out and doing the things, which is why I come back to, what is it that you want? At the end of the day, to be massively successful, it's what do you want? When do you want it? And what are you willing to give up short term to get it? Because when we buy stuff, there's a price. We exchange something of value, typically money, for something else of equal or greater value. It's the same thing as we're building a business, as we're chasing our goals, as we're trying to achieve this level of success that we want for ourselves. If you want something of value, you have to give up something of value. So if you want to buy back your time, if you want to make more money, if you want these material things, you may have to give up some time or some money or a hobby or these things that we don't want to give up. Well, if that's the case, then you don't want this thing bad enough and you need to find a new goal. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to want more. I'm not saying everyone has to achieve a certain level of success, but that's the point. Is my job as a coach, and I'm sure you'll agree with this statement, it's not to teach someone something that they couldn't learn on their own. There's nothing that we're going to teach someone, coach someone, help them with that they couldn't figure out on their own in time.
Oh, very
Our
little.
job as coaches,
very little. Yeah,
exactly, is to speed up that growth curve, identify bottlenecks and points of friction, and third is to hold people accountable to what they want to be held accountable to. That's the key part there, is we have to hold them accountable to what they want to be held accountable to. See, our standards aren't what we think they are. Our standards are actually what we do. We may not achieve our goals all the time, but we'll always live up to the standards that we have. So if we're not doing the thing up to our standard, that's not our real standard, right? So there's this self-awareness piece of it, of not in a punitive way, but in an assessment way. We need to understand, hey, what are we doing right? What can we improve on? Not to punish ourselves or beat ourselves up, but we have to have massive self-awareness that, hey, like I felt like my standard was here, but my actions are here. So I need to increase my actions so that I can also raise my standard. And see, as a coach, and even the people that are around us, right? Jim Rohn's were the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. A true friend doesn't tell us what we want to hear. A good coach doesn't tell us what we want to hear. Those people hold you to the standards that you've set for yourself, making sure your action meets the standard that you have for yourself. And at the end of the day, these are things that aren't easy. They're simple, but they're not easy. Nothing that's worth anything in life is ever easy. We've got to go out and do the work.
I like that. It is simple, but it's not easy. And there's so many things along this genre that, well, I tell a lot of people that you don't have any competition. I don't have any competition, just me. I am my competition. And if it's somebody I'm familiar with, I might even go so far as to say, I just need you to suck less tomorrow than you did today.
That's right.
And in reality, for those of you that I don't know or haven't had the displeasure of dealing with me directly, you just need to be a little better tomorrow.
That's right.
A little better tomorrow. However, introspection, self-awareness, these are hard, really hard things. We've had, and I know you interact and have taken in plenty of content from Renee Rodriguez, and we've had Renee on the show a few times over the years. And Renee is kind of the epitome of that. I love Renee and I hate Renee. Renee is brilliant and so kind and so perceptive and so level-headed. And I mean, the compliments, I couldn't come up with enough. But Renee, kind of like being in therapy, is one of those people that's going to make you take a look at yourself and really admit where you do suck, where you need to improve. And we don't like that as humans. We don't like being told where we suck and where we need to improve. It's really hard to do. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship. If you're willing to do that, if you can give that look inside, if you can really commit to being just a little bit better tomorrow than you were today, then you're going to have that. You're going to have both of those things. But I think it's very difficult for humans in general to want to do that. I think it's just part of the human condition. I really
It
should
is.
say affliction, because we're all kind of cursed with it and how hard that it is. But the way we like to refer to it with our coaching clients is, I need you to fuck up faster. I need you to figure out where you're not doing it right, where the holes in your systems are, where the people on your team that aren't really a fit are. These kinds of things. And you had said something as we've been talking that really made me think about the fact that, yeah, one of the things we really focus on when we're in team building and team structure and growth work with our clients is personality.
That's right.
Because you can hire an LOA, you can hire an office manager, you can hire a VA, you can hire, and you've got to make sure that you are not infringing on company culture, for lack of a better term. I can teach the job. I can teach you how to collect and organize pay stubs. I can teach you how to scan in tax returns. I can even teach you how to price a loan, lock a loan, run to you, on and on and on. But I can't teach you a new personality.
That's right.
If you have a shitty personality, that's all there is to it. So yeah, these are some really big things. And yeah, I can see that we're going to run over. And guys, I can't express enough how fortunate we are, how fortunate all of you are to have Phil on How I Met Your Mortgage, because he's, dropped a dozen nuggets. If you really drill down into them, then you absolutely can. I don't think that it would behoove me to give out some of this information. I really recommend you guys go to Linktree/Phil Treadwell. Phil has some amazing information there. We talked about his monthly mastermind. Obviously, we've talked some about M1 Academy. We talked briefly about the 50 books that everybody needs to read. I'll bet those, if I were to make a list of 50, and we do have some required reading in our program, I'll bet if I looked at that list and made one of my own for 50, I'll bet we'd have 45 of them in synonymity, right? I'll bet they would be fairly identical. I'm trying to think if there's anything really rare, unique in our list. How about what to post?
Yeah,
what's on your list?
Yeah, it is, because
okay.
I was actually featured in Chelsea Peitz's what to post. I have a couple of posts in there. She's been a friend of mine for years.
Okay.
So I'm actually in that book.
So, okay, well, then I'm running out of ideas here. Of those 50, what's really obscure? What do you think that, how about the Purple Cow?
Purple Cow's in there. I got a few Seth Godin books. I got Tribes, Purple Cow, and This Is Marketing by Seth Godin are all three in there. So of those 50, there's 5 categories. There's mindset, there's leadership, there's sales, there's marketing, social media. There's a few mortgage specific ones that, some friends and contemporaries of I have written. And we're in the process of actually updating that list with a few that maybe replace one that's a little bit better. For example, Atomic Habits isn't going anywhere, but a new one that I just read by Brendan Burchard is High Performance Habits. And it's very, very similar, but again, he frames it a different way. It's similar to the way Darren Hardy has Compound Effect, which is also on the list, but we have another book called The Slight Edge. And the Slight Edge concept is, there is no maintaining. You're either progressing or you're regressing. And then how do you do that at a high level? And so there's a lot of cool reading in there. I don't assign reading, but I consume a ton of books, both reading and an Audible. I think that, that's a massively important thing from a mindset perspective. Obviously, podcasting, affirmations, moving your body. There's a lot of these things that we prescribe in our daily habits, because you can't have a positive growth mindset, be in the right headspace when you physically feel like crap. So it's about getting enough sleep, drinking water, moving your body.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's a lot of things like this that, from a coaching perspective, people don't think about. My mission, the mission of M1 Academy, is to help people execute and perform at the level they're capable of. What I do, what my grandma's statement is, my one-liner is, I help driven people overcome obstacles and maximize results. That doesn't mean that my job is to just show them how to create a really good reel with a strong hook, a problem and a solution, or, as Renee teaches, the frame message tie down. Yes, that is part of it, but making sure that hook, problem, solution, or frame message tie down is relevant and organic to our audience, right? We have a basic marketing formula. Who's your audience? What problem do you solve? What's the value providing? And where's the most effective place to provide that value to that audience? Well, that's going to be a individual specific thing that we have to kind of work through. And at the end of the day, whether it's from a book, whether it's from a podcast, whether it's from a conversation, our job is to help move the needle. How do we continue to progress forward? And the one thing, like you talked about, you can't teach a personality. We can teach the how-to. We can teach the tactics. We can show people how to improve their mindset. The thing that I can't do for anyone, you can't do for anyone, that nobody else can do but ourselves, is go take action. And if nobody hears anything else I say, the one thing they need to understand is you are in your life and in your business where you've chosen to be. You are where you've chosen to be. Yes, there's outside circumstances. Yes, there's stuff that happens. But at the end of the day, our entire life in business has been made up of choices of whether to do this, of whether not to do this, of whether this was the right decision or not. And I love that you talked about, you need to fuck up faster, because one of the concepts that I coach on and speak almost every time I'm on stage is this concept of embracing failure. It's not that I want to fail. It's not that I'm setting out to fail or anyone else should. I'm saying that there's never a situation in business where doing nothing is better than doing something, even if you fail. Because if you
well said.
Do nothing, you get nothing. If you do something, you either get a result and get a win, or you failed. You take a loss. But
And
that L in loss is an L for learn. You now have a little more information. We hear it on stage, we read it in memoirs, we hear it in podcasts. Massively successful people failed over and over and over and over, but they learned something, and that's how they're able to succeed. But the problem is we grew up in academia where success and failure were opposites, right? You had to either choose to follow success or fail, because I couldn't fail every test, fail every quiz. Even if I learned everything I got wrong in academia, I'm a quote unquote failure. But in the real world, that's how you succeed. And I think that we have this in our mind that we can't go take action unless we know it's going to work. And to your point, you've got to go out and take massive action and fail the majority of the time so that you can learn what to do. Look at pro baseball. If you have a 300 batting average in pro baseball, you're in the major leagues, probably an all-star. You have a 400 batting average, you're the greatest of all time, you're Ted Williams. But the irony in this whole situation is that 70% of the time, for those that don't speak baseball, 300 batting average, 70% of the time, you strike out, you ground out, you fly out, you go to the back to the dugout having failed. Wait, Phil, you said you can make millions of dollars and be an all-star only succeeding 30% of the time? Yes, that's the point. And see, they fail often and publicly, but they go back to the dugout, study the pitcher, look at their swing on an iPad, and they got to go do it out again, go out and do it again in 15, 20 minutes in front of the same 50,000 people that were calling them every name other than the one their mom gave them. But that's what elite people do. That's what it takes. So there's never a situation where doing nothing's better than doing something, even if you fail. So Tony Robbins has a great quote that you've not truly made a decision unless it creates new action. So there's so many of us that make this decision and quote, get motivated. They hear this, podcast. They hear How I Met Your Mortgage, all these different things. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go do this. They make the decision, but they've not really made the decision because nothing changes. There's no new action. There's no new effort.
Right.
And again, what we're talking about, the action is tactical, but the decision to get there is a mindset thing.
Okay. So I need you to know that we're in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably did, but that we don't have baseball here. So a lot of people aren't going to get that reference. But in reality, I do like some of the professional athlete references and baseball in particular, and that I have to do this again in 15 or 20 minutes kind of thing, because I do think when it comes to the failure, to the learning, that we have short memories about the fact that it was a failure. Learn what you can from it and move on.
That's right.
Let go of that. So I probably prefer the pro football player, for example. And we do actually have pro football in Denver, which is a nice thing. You guys have probably heard of, I don't know, John Elway, Peyton Manning,
right?
Those kinds of things. But an NFL quarterback goes out on the field and throws a pick six. Okay, so you're right. He absolutely goes to the sidelines. He looks at what the lines were. He looks at how the opposing team, the defense, was lined up. Where was that mistake made? Did he commit early? Did he commit late? So on and so forth. And that has to be it, because he does have to get back out there in another 15 minutes and do the same thing.
That's right.
While incorporating what he learned so that we don't have the failures repeat.
That's right.
So action. Absolutely.
It is. So John Maxwell, this is a little precursor. I've not said this publicly. We're actively working on bringing John onto the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast. But he is probably it was the first personal development book I ever read 25 years ago, was 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. But he has a video out there that I saw a couple years ago that I love and I quote all the time. The opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is excuses. Because you can achieve success from failure. You can't achieve success from excuses. And if we'll throw out another book that's on the book list, there's a book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And there's 3 chapters in there, 2, 12, and 13, that talk about the 3 failure diseases: excuse-itis, detail-itis, and procrastination. And we've got to understand these things, that more often than not, we're just making excuses, or we're trying to get caught up in the details, or we're putting it off, which is another excuse. At the end of the day, an excuse is just a lie wrapped with a reason. I used to have a mentor that said, any excuse will do. I'm like, what? I'd say to him like, any excuse will do. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, it doesn't matter what your excuse is. Any of them will do, because you're just making an excuse.
Use whichever one you want.
Yeah. So we have to remember that is, at the end of the day, what's keeping us from taking action? Do we not have clarity in what we're trying to do? Is it something we don't want bad enough? We've got to go out and take action. We've got to remove these self-limiting beliefs. We have to get out of our head that failure is bad. And there's people who are like, well, Phil, I'm not afraid of failure. Okay. Are you all right with people seeing you fail? Because that's a different thing.
That is.
If they're not paying your bills, if they're not helping you achieve your goals, who cares what they think?
Well, and they really don't. That's another big piece of the human condition, is that we actually think people are thinking about us all the time.
That's right.
And they're not.
See, that's the other part, is we think we have this big spotlight on us, and we don't, because they're too busy thinking the spotlight's on them.
We are all the stars of our own movie.
That's right.
The rest of you are just supporting cast.
That's right.
Absolutely. Okay, here's an obscure one. Let's see, because
Okay.
the message is really good. Taking imperfect action, the art of getting shit done.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on your 50?
It is not on my 50. I have read it, but it is not on my 50, and probably should be. That's a really good one.
That's a good one. And yeah, it is the exact opposite of the excuse mechanism.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and there are a ton of them.
We've got some OG classics on there, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Sure.
It was written 100 years ago or close to it. And it's still, a really good friend of mine owns a independent real estate company, has about 150 agents. And once a quarter, he'll do a 6-week book study. And there was one of Everything's Figure Outable. That was a pretty cool book. This one's going through How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's a book that I've either listened to on Audible or read probably a half a dozen times, over my career and life. And I forget that it means something different at different stages. And so my point in that, or the tie down, as Renee would say, is we have to find a way to trick our minds into doing what we want to do. See, the thing that we forget is we can know that we're tricking our mind and it still work, because our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, not how big they are. So the reason I'm big on daily habits, that I'm big on non-negotiables, is whenever you get up a little earlier, or go to the gym, or drink a protein shake instead of eating a donut, right? You reach out to 5 realtors, you say your affirmations, you listen to a podcast, whatever it is. Instead of just stacking habits like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, what we're actually doing is stacking wins. So we could go into our first phone call. Let's say we bomb it, but our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, not how big they are. So it's like, well, we bombed that phone call, but I made my bed this morning. Those cancel each other out. I still have momentum. And see, momentum creates more motivation. Whenever we check stuff off, whenever we cross something off a list, we get excited and we want to do more. Momentum creates more motivation. how many times we walk through the garage on a Sunday to fix something on the shelf, 3 hours later, we've cleaned the whole garage. Or one of the things I fall into is I love queso. I'll have queso in my microwave and it'll boil over, and then you got to clean the glass plate out, and then you're cleaning the microwave, and then you're wiping the counters down. Next thing I know, you clean the whole kitchen, you're looking at touching up the paint on the walls, right? Momentum leads to motivation. So if we stack wins, momentum, motivation, but the most important part of this is it also creates confidence. See, confidence is not a personality trait. Confidence is a skill that we learn. When we see these people that have swagger, where they seem like they own the room, that wasn't a born with trait. That was a skill, because what they understand is those little decisions I make every day that actually moves the needle way more than the losses do of any size. So if I just continue to grind and do those little things, I'm going to get where I want to go. And see, it doesn't have to be huge things. If you'll notice, a lot of the things I listed out as far as daily habits, they're things we probably would do anyway, things we probably enjoy. But when we put intentionality to it and we say, here's when I'm waking up, I'm going to go to the gym while I'm, warming up on the treadmill. I'm going to listen to a podcast, say affirmations, take quiet time. Then I'm going to lift. And then I'm going to go home and drink a protein shake. And then I'm going to make my bed. And I'm going to be intentional with my, significant other and, kids or whatever that is. Then I'm going to go into the office, and here I'm going to look at my goals. I'm going to reach out to this many people. All of a sudden, we start stacking these wins. We create some massive momentum that turns into confidence. And all of a sudden, we subscribe to the Ed Milet thing we were talking about, is we believe what we're saying at a higher level by doing things we already were doing, but we put them on a list and we check them off, or we put it in our app or whatever it is that we're doing. And all of a sudden, our entire business changes. And when you have your habits and your calendar appointments, we can proactively attack the day, as opposed to, let's be honest, in the mortgage business, 90% of the time, we're reactive to stuff that happens to us. And when we change that dynamic, it changes the direction of our business.
Very true. And just for the record, and yes, I know we're way over time, everybody. I see those comments as well. I did make my bed this morning.
Good.
We're going to chalk that one down as a win. But even better, guys, I had Phil Treadwell from M1 Academy on the How I Met Your Mortgage podcast today. That's a big win. In fact,
Adam,
I might just exit the day on a high note. I might go spend the rest of it at the pool.
I feel the same way. It's a pleasure to be on. I was very excited to get the invite, man. It's always awesome to bump into you at events and places that we're speaking and things of that nature. I love what you're doing for the industry. Anybody that is in your sphere of influence, in your network, in your coaching program, guys, it's an honor to be there. Listen to what this guy says. He's massively successful at what he does. He has an abundance of knowledge and is going to help you achieve your goals as well. So I don't take it lightly that I had the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you. Kind words, very kind words. All right. So for the rest of you watching, listening, live or in the station, and Phil, thank you. I know that carving out this kind of time on a Monday morning, especially when there are assholes out there driving into light poles, knocking out the power, is a very big deal. I do appreciate you taking the extra steps beyond that even to make it work. But for the rest of you, we've got all kinds of shit at Just the Tips, not just the How I Met Your Mortgage podcast, the weekly little tip video blog. We do an annual sales conference, the Mile High Mastermind. There are ways to get copies of my books, both Just the Tips and Mindset Tools for Sales. All that stuff's on the website. It's justthetipscoaching.com. But you can catch us live on Monday mornings at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The podcast is up 48 hours later on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. And I'm just going to end it there because I know there was a bunch of things that Jen had always trained me to get out there at the end of a podcast. And she'll probably comment again on the fact that I didn't cover it. But she did post a public comment while we were going that said, stacking wins. Love that. So she absolutely has been paying close attention to you today as well, Phil, as I'm sure most of our audience has. So let's do a sequel.
Absolutely.
I'll get that into the hopper right now. We're about a year booked out, but I will absolutely put that into the works right now. And yeah, thank you. Again, this has been fantastic, man.
Well, man, I look forward to catching up again really soon.
We will. All right. And for the rest of you, thanks for tuning in. And we will certainly see you guys next time. Phil, don't run off too quickly. I'm going to run our extra, but would love a couple minutes with you after we're done.
Sure.